Hi everyone, this is Hannah once again with the PSA at the beginning of an episode. Just popping in to say that this episode contains discussions of eating disorders, anti-Asian and anti-Black racism. So if you'd rather not hear about any of those topics, feel free to skip this episode. Thank you. Welcome to Sleepover Cinema, where we analyze the films that created the collective unconscious of those who thought Mary-Kate and Ashley were three whole people for far too long. I'm Hannah Leach.
And I'm Audrey Leach. We are the sister filmmaking duo, also known as Two Pink Pictures, and we have not stopped thinking about these movies since we first saw them.
We're going to explore the good, the bad, and the nonsensical of the movies that first inspired our love for film in an attempt to answer the question, are these movies actually good? And at the end of the day, do we really care if they are?
Today we are talking about 2004's New York Minute, starring Mary-Kate and Ashley.
If there's something I'm not, that's a rat. She's in Manhattan at a video shoot.
Your speech doesn't start until 3 o'clock. That gives you 3.5 hours. 4.5. Same thing.
We're on a marathon mission.
Hang on, people.
Flight time's over, Ryan. You know they say it's a city that never sleeps.
Oh, I think it will now that you've hit town, Gomer.
Warner Brothers Pictures presents
Twins.
Hi! We haven't spent the day together in years.
Mary-Kate Olsen, Ashley Olsen, Eugene Levy.
Woo! Going down! Snap out of it.
New York Minute.
Before we get into it,
Oh, yes.
I just want to mention these beautiful earrings that we have on that were sent to us by Alien Brats. That is the store name. You can find earrings such as these on Etsy, Instagram, Depop. I think she's everywhere. I think she's on all the platforms.
Yes.
At Alien Brats.
My earrings feature Braceface, the cartoon woman of our dreams. I haven't watched Braceface in such a long time, but these earrings are inspiring me to rewatch it. So
And mine say hottie.
they say hottie.
Hot, yeah.
My earrings do indeed say hottie. You gotta go check them out because any niche interest you have from the early 2000s or late 90s, there are most likely a pair of earrings that will represent that niche interest on her site.
Yes. Like, I literally now own Freaks and Geeks earrings.
And this is what we're talking about. So, New York Minute is an interesting movie. We're obviously going to talk about it, but do you think we should just get straight to the facts, or do we have any comments we want to unleash before we get to the facts?
I mean, I just have one general comment, and that is, oof.
Yeah, so normally when we record these episodes, we actually break in the middle and watch the movie, but, Audrey and I are busy women. It doesn't always work out that way, so we both pre-watched it this time, which is going to make our attempt at objectivity in the facts a little bit challenging, but, we're going to do our best. So why don't we just get into the facts?
Well, rein it in, hold it back.
Yes.
Until the second section.
Yes, we will. So, New York Minute was released in theaters on May 7th, 2004. It was directed by Denny Gordon, who is in fact a woman. She also directed What a Girl Wants, similar genre, similar era. She also, I just thought it was funny that she directed one episode of AJ and the Queen, which is the RuPaul show where it's like RuPaul and the Kid, and it got canceled. And like everyone always dunks on it for having gotten canceled. Otherwise, she's directed like a ton of TV, and according to her IMDb bio, she was one of the first women to graduate from the Yale School of Drama with an MFA in directing. So,
If I could snap.
quite.
I just can't snap.
So good for her.
Good for her.
There were a lot of producers attached to this movie. There were like 8 people listed as a producer, which makes sense considering that it was a Mary-Kate and Ashley movie. But the highlights, in my opinion, include Denise DeNovi, who we talked about when we did the Heathers episode with Yara, the Heathers versus the Craft episode. She's very much a woman of repute. She produced such classics such as the 2019 Little Women, The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants 1 and 2, What a Girl Wants, A Walk to Remember, the 1994 Little Women, Practical Magic, Edward Scissorhands, movies that really live in our hearts. So shout out to Denise DeNovi. In fact, in the opening credits, it even says a Denise DeNovi production. So good for her. Then the twins, obviously, Mary-Kate and Ashley were producers on this. I'm pretty sure that this was dual star in association with Denise DeNovi. And Dual Star, of course, was their production company that their parents created and then like bequeathed onto Mary-Kate and Ashley when they turned 18. And then there's like 6 other producers, and it looks like all of them except for one are women, though, which is cool and kind of rare. This movie was written by Emily Fox, who is known as a writer and producer. She was a writer on Hindsight and Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, and a producer on both those shows, and also the Series of Unfortunate Events Netflix series, and Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, which I don't know what that is, but I just hate the name.
I hate it.
Have you seen it?
No, I watched the pilot, and it was awful. It was literally terrible. I know that there are some people out there who enjoy it, and we probably have some listeners that enjoy it, and I would love to know why. I really would love to know why.
What is it about?
Because if it's literally this girl who hears and sees musical numbers, and it's like not actually happening, you know, like an NBC generic look, generic
yes.
Everything.
Yes.
Like, it's that.
Got it. Okay, well, we're saying fuck you to Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. We have that noted. And this woman, Emily Fox, also was a writer and producer on Jane by Design. I don't know what that is either. Okay, like Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, Jane by Design, and Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce all seem like shows that I would be like embarrassed to watch.
Yeah, and like, sorry if you watch them.
I'm sorry if you like those shows. Just the titles are really like cringy to me. And then we also have the writing duo of Adam Cooper and Bill Collage, is how I'm choosing to pronounce his last name. They are a writer duo who are known for Assassin's Creed and Allegiant, so I don't really know what they were doing writing New York Minute. But they did that.
Me either.
It's attributed to the three of them.
That's questionable.
It is questionable. So now we're arriving at the plot synopsis. Audrey, would you care to take us away? Oh, wait, I have one thing to say, though, before you read it, which is when you pull up their IMDb page, or when you pull up the IMDb page for New York Minute, it's described in these 3 categories: comedy, crime, and family. And I just thought that was really funny, especially because going into rewatching this movie, I remembered very, very, very little about what it actually contained. So I was like, interesting combination. Anyway, Audrey, what is this movie about?
One day in New York City, Jane Ryan tries out for an overseas college program. Her twin sister Roxy schemes to meet her favorite punk rockers, and a series of mishaps throws their day into chaos. The usually adversarial sisters decide to unite against the forces around them so both can accomplish their goals.
A suspect plot synopsis.
And as for taglines, we've got one here. Pretty predictable, but it is anything can change in a New York minute.
So bad. It's also, to me, like, they never say New York Minute. They never talk about a New York Minute. It's just called New York Minute. I hate it when titles are like that.
I mean, a lot of times that's respectable when that happens, but maybe not in this genre.
In this movie, it's like, yeah, okay, in this genre, yes. I think it's lame in this genre. In general, if it was that on the nose every single time, that would be weird.
Right.
That's a good point. Okay, so now we have the cast. And again, when I first compiled this list, I really wasn't sure who was an important character and who wasn't. So this was a little bit arbitrary, but I went back in and added someone else. So first of all, we have Mary-Kate as Roxy Ryan. Mary-Kate had like a slightly longer acting career than Ashley did. She was on Beastly in 2011, and I looked up some scenes from it, and it was really weird looking. And she was also on Weeds in 2007. She was like a legit character on that show. And it goes without saying, New York Minute was the last time that the Olsen twins appeared on screen together. So this was their last movie, their last co-production.
It brings tears
of their own
to my
shit.
eyes.
I know, it's really sad. Then next up we have Ashley as Jane Ryan, and the last thing she was in, she made apparently like a cameo in this movie called The Jerk Theory, which I sent Audrey the link to the trailer, but I don't know if she watched it. Did you watch it?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I'll just tell you briefly what it was about because it's really noteworthy. There's this movie that came out in 2009, and it's literally a Nice Guys Finish Last movie. And it's like, the jerk theory is like, if you're mean to girls, they'll like be more into you.
Yeah.
And it looked like extremely painful, and I don't know why she would have made an appearance in it, but apparently she did. That's kind of the acting careers of Ashley and Mary-Kate separately, but together they starred in 193 episodes of Full House, like countless movies and straight to like tape home releases through Dual Star, and they were extremely famous and continue to be extremely famous, and you know that if you're listening to this podcast, but we have a short history of the Olsen twins we will get to later that I think will shed some light a bit on like the context of their fame, which I find to be interesting. Anyway, next we have Eugene Levy as Max, also an extremely famous person, kind of someone in this movie where you see him and you're like, why is he in this?
Him and Andy Richter.
Yeah. But he's known for Schitt's Creek the most right now, I think, is definitely his thing he's hanging his hat on. But he was in Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, American Pie. He's just like an extremely ubiquitous American actor, and he's been in over 60 movies, and he's age 75, so booked and blessed.
He's also in Josie and the Pussycats.
Does he have a cameo?
In that cameo role, he plays himself.
Oh my god, right. Yeah. I actually saw that when I was making the list, but I like couldn't remember what it was exactly, but yeah. He's that kind of famous where he can star as himself in a cameo role and people know who he is. Next up we have Andy Richter as Benny, potentially one of the worst conceived characters in anything I have ever seen.
Anything we've covered and anything in general.
Yes. He's known to Audrey and I as Conan O'Brien's sidekick. I would say we grew up in a Conan O'Brien household.
Yeah, we did.
And he also was on Arrested Development, and he's been in like a ton of TV stuff. Writer, actor, funny man. He's kind of like he and Jack Black come from the same planet, but they're like not the same. That's kind of how I think of it. Not to invoke the name of Jack Black casually, because it's not casual here. It's not casual here. And then the person I added to the list was Jared Padalecki as Trey, because when he came on screen, I was like, fuck, he looks so familiar. And he plays Roxy's love interest in the movie. But he was on Supernatural, and more relevant to us, he was Dean on Gilmore Girls. When I was on IMDb and I hadn't seen the movie, I saw all of Simple Plan on there, and I was like, where are we going? And then I saw Bob Saget, and I was like, you know that's got to be a stupid cameo. And I was right, ultimately. So
yeah,
that was, that's the cast, pretty much. Audrey, do you want to take us into some of these numbers?
The overall budget was roughly $30 million. The box office opening weekend,
I know,
was $5,962,106. And the overall worldwide gross was $21,289,826. So that might have just murdered Mary-Kate and Ashley's movie career.
That's actually such a good point. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it is a business.
And they know, because they are business women.
They are business women, and they said, if we're not going to make our money back, then we're not reliable stars here.
Yeah. And because one thing that occurred to me when it came to the money in this movie too was like, and I was going to bring this up later, but since it's coming up now, just like the ruthlessly expensive on location shooting for everything, and having an animal the whole time, and having Eugene Levy, who probably cost a lot of money. I was just like, why would you let your script be this bad and spend this much money?
Yeah. Oh, we can talk about it later, but I have more to say on that.
We'll come back.
So there's an 11% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. That's one of the worst I've ever seen.
I know.
Really, really, really bad. This whole thing is kind of echoing like the Material Girls story.
Yes,
as well.
Really true.
But yeah, it's the same type of vibe here. The critical consensus feels more like a calculated product designed to expand the Olsen's brand than an actual movie. Also, it contains ethnic stereotyping and sexual innuendo. Yeah, we'll speak more on it later, but it is horrendous. And then the audience score was 47%, and let's just acknowledge that like 30% difference between critic and audience is purely due to love for Mary-Kate and Ashley.
Yeah.
And, feeling love and nostalgic towards them, even though they weren't nostalgic yet at the time. But they were a little bit because people knew them their whole life, basically. Kids did.
And so we picked some critic reviews here.
Separately, the characters are annoying. Together, it's unnervingly like watching one actress playing twins. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then the third one is, admittedly, in all this stupidity, there are a couple of laugh out loud moments, but these do not make up for the fact that mediocrity is a poor replacement for talent and comic timing.
Groundbreaking take there. Mediocrity versus talent and comic timing. Normally we would talk about celebrity gossip of the era right now, and we are going to talk about that sort of, but I really wanted to just give a little bit of context to Mary-Kate and Ashley's career. I actually thought this was our first Mary-Kate and Ashley movie that we did, and then Audrey gently reminded me that we did do Passport to Paris. But I was curious, and I find the Olsen twins to be extremely interesting in the way that they have sort of become these like phantoms of Hollywood existence. Like, no one ever sees them in real life. They're never in things. They never do interviews. And they don't have social media.
I love it for them.
I think too.
I think it's perfect. And I love that anytime that they are seen, it's in New York, all black, really interesting fashion, and smoking a cigarette.
Yep, every time. They kind of look like dolls too when you see them, like kind of like spooky dolls. So keep that mental image in your mind. That's them now. But so everyone knows that Mary-Kate and Ashley got famous from Full House, which was a really long running sitcom. And they were cast in Full House at 6 months old. And basically they were just like launched to extreme fame pretty much immediately. They both played Michelle Tanner, switching off like who played her in what scene, or based off of like what kid had their shit together in the given moment. So they were famous actresses, but almost more importantly, they were like a huge brand through Dual Star. So I picked this little excerpt from the Wikipedia page for the Olsen twins that I felt like was really worth hearing. So I'm just going to read it. Mary-Kate and Ashley, and of course it's Wikipedia, so some shit might be wrong. I'm sorry. Mary-Kate and Ashley were popular figures in the preteen market during the late 90s and early 2000s. How appropriate for us. Their names and likenesses extended not only to movies and videos, but to clothes, shoes, purses, hats, books, CDs, and cassette tapes, fragrances and makeup, magazines, video and board games, dolls, posters, calendars, and even telephones and CD players. With a market share made up mostly of tweens, with a market share made up mostly of tweens. Mattel produced various sets of Mary-Kate and Ashley fashion dolls from 2000 to 2005, along with separate outfits and accessory packs. The sisters became co-presidents of Dual Star on their 18th birthday in 2004, which was right around the time that this movie came out. This movie came out like a month before their 18th birthday, because they are Geminis. Hee hee. How appropriate. Upon taking control of the company, Mary-Kate and Ashley made moves to secure the future of the company by releasing products that appealed to the teen market. The Dual Star brand has been sold in more than 3,000 stores in the US and over 53,000 stores worldwide. The Olsens have appeared on the Forbes Celebrity 100 list since 2002. In 2007, Forbes ranked them collectively as the 11th richest women in entertainment with an estimated net worth of $100 million. And where the celebrity gossip comes in my mind, is like, I remember I learned what anorexia was because of Mary-Kate Olsen. Do you remember that, Audrey?
Not like super specifically, but yeah.
So like, as we've talked about before, I had my really intense collaging phase around 2004. So I was like always reading People magazine and like InStyle and like Star and that kind of stuff. And tabloid culture was still really raging at the time, and they were like really convinced that Mary-Kate had an eating disorder. I found this interview that was like one of the last public interviews they did as a acting duo with Oprah, where Oprah like puts them on the spot about what size they are, and it's really, really uncomfortable.
There's a new rumor that's recently surfaced, has really upset you, right? You know, the one about eating.
Yeah, you know, people are going to write what they want to write. We try not to read the good or the bad because it just kind of comes with the territory. You know, either you're too fat, you're too skinny, and people are just going to write what they
What size are you, by the way?
Size?
Yeah, I always like to know.
I'm really sure.
You're not sure?
Girls and, you know.
That's so interesting.
You can just see how they were already kind of wired to be private people, and shit like that would just like push them even further towards being super private people.
And you know what else is interesting about those early 2000s interviews with Oprah or Diane Sawyer, or, you know, women that are really, really famous and successful as interviewers, where obviously like times have changed a lot, but you would just, looking back at it now, you would just think that they would have a little bit more like awareness of the questions. Like, I'm just wondering if there were outside sources that kind of made them ask questions like this, or if they were really in control.
Yeah, that's actually, I was going to bring that up because I listened to this other podcast. This shouldn't surprise anyone, but I listened to The C Word, hosted by Lena Dunham and Alyssa Bennett, and they basically tell the stories of like female celebrity downfall. That's pretty much the premise of it. And they talk all the time about how the Diane Sawyer interview was like the make or break for Damage Control back in the day.
Yeah.
Like, you would go on there and like talking about like the Whitney Houston ones where she asks her about doing drugs, like all that stuff. Like, you could really help yourself a lot or hurt yourself a lot based off of a Diane Sawyer interview. And I feel like there had to have been producers that put Oprah and Diane like up to asking questions like this, but also I think that like there was a lot more internalized misogyny back then.
And also, like, at that time there was no other real media outlet where where that star was gonna like come clean or like expose themselves or like say the truth.
Right.
So, you know, it's like all that tabloid action going on, and then there's the interview. And so that's what everyone's going to tune in for, is this like absolutely toxic, terrible headlines they've been reading for months.
Anyway, all of that in mind, Mary-Kate and Ashley launched The Row, which was their first like high-end, non like you're going to find this shit in Kohl's line. And when they first sold it, according to this article that I found on E, we sold it at first with no label, Mary-Kate admitted to Women's Wear Daily in 2016. Only certain people knew it was us behind it. We didn't do any press. Our idea, because we had been in the branding industry for a very long time, was if the product's good, it will sell. And it worked. In the 13 years since the launch, they've introduced 3 more lines, including the wildly popular Elizabeth and James. And they've won like 1 million awards for all of their like design and business achievements. And then another excerpt from this article. They notoriously avoided the rise of social media and what presence there might have been on there to offer their brand. We've spent our whole lives trying to not let people have that accessibility, so it would go against everything we've done in our lives to not be in the public. Mary-Kate told Vogue in 2011. We're used to being on the other side of the camera and managing the process, so it's hard for us to do photo shoots now, Mary-Kate said. That's why you have models.
I love that.
I know.
I love that for them. They're like, actually, you all can just shut up.
Yeah.
Like, we don't care.
Yeah, I love that they're like, yeah, we're never getting on camera again. We pay people to do that now. That is not what we're here for. Now you're caught up on a brief history of Mary-Kate and Ashley. Tell me what you remembered about this movie.
Well, I actually have no clue when I saw it the first time. This is one of those movies where I'm just like, I know I didn't see it like as recent as college for the first time, but I don't know when. So I'm guessing it was somewhere between, it's a pretty broad range, somewhere between like 5th grade and like 10th grade, somewhere in there.
Yes. I think I can illuminate where you saw it because I remember where we saw it.
Oh, okay.
Which was, we watched it at a sleepover or like a long hang at Aaron and Julia's house, who are our cousins.
Oh.
And I remember like the Avril Lavigne reference a lot because when I saw this movie, I was a huge Avril Lavigne stan. I remembered so clearly someone falling on scaffolding into a dumpster. And I remember being like, why are they being chased by Eugene Levy? And I remember most potently that Jane and Roxy, they're twins. One of them is like kind of rocker. The other one is like a good girl. And I was immediately thinking about the Bratz twins that Audrey and I had. Their names were Phoebe and Roxy, but Roxy was the name for like the cool, like proto Liz Gillies in a tween thing type person. Would love to know Mattel's thoughts behind why Roxy was the name. Imagine
it wasn't Mattel.
Yeah. Oh fuck! It wasn't Mattel. It was Hasbro or something.
It wasn't. I don't know. I forget who it was. MGA.
Right.
MGA.
Oh, we know about the beef. We know about the long legal battle. I think we've said quite enough for now. If you have not seen New York Minute or you haven't watched it in a long time, it is legally available on HBO Max right now. So you can watch it on there. I'm sure you can find it somewhere else. But go give it a watch. Prepare yourself for what you were about to witness. And we will meet back here to discuss. Okay, we are back, and it is time to do a majestic swan dive into the into the lake of trash. It's New York Minute.
Lake of trash.
I guess we should start with what we appreciated about it, as we like to do. We like to front load our positive comments and then just get into it.
And this is a staple amongst all the Mary-Kate and Ashley filmography, but there are a lot of car montages, like them being in the car and there's music playing, they're seeing things, they're having quirky antics in the car. That is my favorite. I love Mary-Kate and Ashley car montages. I did actually think that Mary-Kate and Ashley's acting was improved upon compared to some of their past work. And that is saying something.
Their past work.
That, the moment where they're like standing in Times Square and they're like, I hate you. And they're like, I hate you. I was like, hey, is this great? No. But I think that it's better than how they would have done it years prior. Like, I think it actually was improved upon. I thought the Simple Plan integration was like extremely heavy-handed, but fun,
Yes, I had questions about that, just in the sense of like, who was paying who? Were they paying Simple Plan, or was Simple Plan paying them? And were they planning on doing further branding with Simple Plan? Like, there had to be a business concept there, but
They probably had an album. Another observation I had was that Eugene Levy was really giving me like Steve Carell in Sleepover.
Yes.
Like, it was like the same type of character, but I think Steve was much funnier in Sleepover. Like,
yeah.
And he wasn't taken completely seriously as like a villain.
Yes.
So, I don't know. I love the I Heart NY outfits. I think that is the moment. That is the moment in the movie when they finally come out of the porta potties in their twin looks. You know, we were ready for that. We were expecting that. We have more NJ Transit representation in this movie.
Yes, I had that same thought. But it's not NJ Transit, it's the LIRR this time.
Yeah, it's the LIRR. But that's harkening back to our very first episode ever. Confessions of a Teenage
It's a deep
Drama
harken.
Queen. Yeah. The moment that I most enjoyed in this entire movie was at the 58-minute, 14-second mark. And that is where I saw my street and also my apartment, like where I live now, is in the movie. And the end of my street is super recognizable because there's like a bridge where the train, the PATH train goes on. And so as soon as I saw the bridge, I was like, oh, that is my street. So it was cool to see my street in 2004.
Things I appreciated. Their bedrooms in the beginning are awesome. It gave me big, like, tricked out locker, tricked out bedroom vibes. Tricked out closet. When they get in the car for the first time and the Donna starts playing, I was like, wow, a kind of deep soundtrack choice. Interesting. I thought the Department of Truancy was like a really funny concept because it's like so stupid, like it doesn't exist. That's like the whole point. That he just made it up. That was it. That was what I appreciated. Oh, but I did have a question for the culture, as they say, which is, how do Mary-Kate and Ashley decide who's gonna play who?
Yeah.
And another question, which is, wasn't one of them like the sporty one and one of them like the dancer one in like their branding in general?
I think that was, it was for their branding. I have no clue if any of that actually bears weight to who they are.
Yeah.
It might not. It probably doesn't.
It probably doesn't. Okay, so how do we even begin to dive into what is bad or problematic?
Okay, so first of all, right off the bat, we've got dead mom exposition.
Yes.
That does not exist. You know, it actually does exist for a reason, because it's the wedge between them. It's the wedge between the twins, and that comes to a head. Like, that's the actual emotional climax of it. But you really don't have to walk past a picture frame of your dead mom and say, I miss you.
You really don't. You really don't have that. That doesn't have to be her first line.
We don't need Eugene as a character and Andy as a character.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like one of them was supposed to be causing more trouble for one, and the other was supposed to be causing more trouble for the other. But
it didn't really work out that way.
It didn't work out that way. It didn't feel like they had their own villains.
No, it didn't at all.
So it didn't work. And also Andy's entire subplot and that entire subplot should have been X'd out and gotten rid of a long, long, long time before they made this movie. I also think that probably the marketing and like the storyline that was portrayed through the trailer did not help the marketing of the movie and did not help the success of the movie. Why would do we want to see Mary-Kate and Ashley in New York City? Yes. But we don't want to see them like running from weird men.
Yeah.
We want to see them discovering their passions, finding a crush, you know, like we want to see them, maybe get, you know, a fashion line or something.
Yeah,
like
that's
something
so
that
true.
is closer to them, because you see the poster and like how iconic that would be, but when you watch the trailer, it's like, oh, I actually don't give a crap about the storyline, and it's so random. The whole thing is incredibly random, and I wish that they had just taken all the elements and reasons as to why we loved Mary-Kate and Ashley content and infused it into this final blow, this final cinematic statement. Aww. What they have provided.
Yeah, I am really like sad. I'm like emotional at this speech. Like I want that too. Like why did it have to be like a weird caper movie with like you just watch them be stressed and looking bad for most of it. And it's like that's not what we like. That was like a harrowing address that you just gave. Like holy shit. Also, I just remember when we did Material Girls and they even said that it was originally written for Mary-Kate and Ashley?
Yeah.
I wonder if they were like, let's do Material Girls or New York Minute. Let's pick between the two. Why would they have picked the other one? Whatever. I will say in this movie, if you don't pay attention for like 20 seconds, you're kind of fucked.
You miss it.
You're kind of done.
Good luck.
Yeah. Like, I have no idea how the Gilmore Girls guy showed. Like, did she know him before?
I actually don't know either how he showed up. I was like, all of a sudden we're in this senator's son apartment, and I have no clue.
I feel like they got into that whole senator subplot in like 6 seconds. Like I looked away for 1 second, and then I was like, how are they even here?
I didn't care about either of them. That was another note I had, was the boys are very irrelevant.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to this movie. That's not what we would have wanted.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like fully concentrated on anything. It wasn't fully concentrated on the rift between the sisters because of their mom. It wasn't fully concentrated on the education, like how the one twin wants education and the other twin wants like a record deal. It wasn't concentrated on that. It wasn't concentrated on the boys, you know, and like the crushes. And so it wasn't concentrated on anything.
No, it wasn't. It was kind of concentrated on like getting the day planner back. Like I thought that was kind of fine, but
yeah, I mean that was their only concrete goal. The trope of in the lowest of the low moment when one walks around and sees what they lack.
Yup.
So they're literally just walking around seeing like random girls and like families, and they're like, oh, like
it was so bad. It was so bad.
So bad.
It was really bad. First of all, well, the first scene of the movie is really fucking weird. Like with the CGI and they're like running around and like inside of a clock. I'm like, what is
bad
this?
Dream.
So that was weird. There was a lot of really bad Photoshop in the pictures in their house.
Yeah, I wrote that too.
It was like horrible, like absolutely horrible. Why couldn't they have just put like? Did they spend all the budget on the on-location shooting? Probably. They couldn't get a reasonable Photoshop person to do the shit. I thought that the line where Roxy's like, I'm going to a play like Shakespeare in the Park, and they're like talking about that, and then the dad's like, Mom would be so proud of you. I'm like, why would Mom be proud of her for going to see a play?
Going on a field trip.
Literally, I was like, this is so heavy-handed.
I guess the standards are that low for Roxy at this point in her life.
I guess that is true. I also thought that it was really annoying that, and Audrey kind of pushed back on this, but like the whole movie is like they're seniors because Jane is trying to get this scholarship and like this admission to this fancy college, and then meanwhile the dad is like threatening Roxy with like a private school reformatory for girls the whole time, and it's like, are you going to enroll her in the reformatory for girls for like just the second half of her senior year? Like, what's the idea? So I was confused by that. I was extremely uncomfortable through a lot of this movie, but one of the parts that made me super uncomfortable, which normally I would put it in problematic, but because there's so much in problematic, I put it in bad, which is when the Gilmore Girls guy walks into his apartment and it suddenly becomes this weird, like, allusion to, like, porn, like, where he walks in and then Roxy's on the bed in a towel and it gets like slow motion and it's like, hey baby, hey, and she like flips her hair, and then the other sister comes in and he's like, whoa, is it my birthday? It's like, ew. Why was that a thing he said? And also, why did they continue to entertain his ass if that was the first thing he said? I thought also in that scene where they're tossing the dog back and forth, you can literally see that it's like a limp stuffed animal in a lot of it, which was funny. And also when they end up landing in the dumpster, because they do in fact fall from scaffolding into a dumpster, there's a part where like they're like peeking up over the dumpster and then they like scoot over, like they like shimmy their way out of the dumpster, but the dog is in between them and the dog moves on like a perfect horizontal plane. And you just know there was someone in that dumpster like holding the dog and like dragging it like across the screen. I just thought that was so funny. And the amount that this dog had to go through, it had to have been so sedated to get through this shit. I was like, this poor dog. I'm concerned about this dog. And I was also super annoyed that she got the fucking fellowship after all of that. Yeah. It was such a reach.
Oh, yeah. That's what I literally was so offended by that. I put it in problematic.
It is bad.
She fucks up so thoroughly and still gets the scholarship.
Yeah.
Like this is the height of privilege.
It really is. That's such a good point. Okay, speaking of the height of privilege, shall we get into the problematic elements of this movie?
There isn't a plot line of this movie that isn't offensive in some way.
Yeah.
So we've got Andy Richter, who is a character that believes he's Chinese, because I think what they're saying is that he was like adopted.
Yeah.
By a Chinese mother, and so he's like grown up in Chinatown. That's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, but I don't think it's that he thinks he's Chinese. I think it's that he speaks, well, he does literally speak with this Chinese accent, and I guess the implication is that he would talk like that because he like has grown up in a Chinese family, which doesn't make any sense.
It's all played for a punchline, which is the real, like extreme issue. It kind of reminds me of like Freaky Friday. It's sort of similar to what they've got going on in Freaky Friday, but honestly so much worse. The language was butchered.
Oh yeah, because they're
butchered.
There is a scene where Jane and Andy Richter speak I think it's Mandarin, I could be wrong. And it is really excruciatingly bad.
It's really white sounding. Yeah, I was like, this is bad.
Yeah.
And not only do we have that whole situation, but we also have the extremely cursed salon sequence in this movie. It's like if they created the most offensive cursed version of the bend and snap scene.
Yeah.
Like it's very much playing on a trope of, we've got black characters who sort of transform these little white girls and are like fairy godmothers, And
the context of it in this movie is like, shit's looking real bad for Mary-Kate and Ashley. They look bad. They're really in a tough position. They gotta get this speech to the place in Columbia. And they like accidentally end up on the wrong side of Manhattan is like the idea. And it's like this like caricature of like a black neighborhood. And then they go,
it's like 125th Street, Harlem.
Oh yeah. But it's like really heavy-handed, and then they go in.
Yeah.
And it is, Audrey described it so well, it is like a super cursed bend and snap.
And it's like, oh, so this movie is just 1,000,000% aware of what's going on. This is not, there's nothing about this is them not knowing what they're doing.
Yeah.
They are operating within these confines,
Yeah, and again, this goes back to what Audrey said at the very beginning, where she said the line about a more corporate bling, because the place is called House of Bling, and like the main hairdresser like gets one of the girls seated. It's Jane, and she's like, "Oh, like I'm gonna make you look great," and she was like, "What do you mean?" And the lady's like, "It's House of Bling, duh, like what do you think?" And then Jane is like, "I'd prefer a more corporate bling." And it's like, okay, that's actual just overt racism. It's treated like their stop in Emerald City a little bit.
Right.
But like it just is really, it's like the classic 2004, 2005 like edgy reworkings of older structures. Like even when you think about like, it reminds me of Material Girls, like trying to play at acknowledging race for humor, but like not doing it in the right way at all.
Mm-hmm. It's a blemish so bad that you cannot, at the end of the day, claim that this movie is good.
Yeah. No. Well, no.
I think.
Well, you can't even make the case that it's like worth. This kind of goes into our next thing, which is you can't really even make the case that it is worth rewatching or showing to kids that are like 13 now, because it's so egregiously horrible.
Yeah, I wouldn't. There's so many other Mary-Kate and Ashley movies that are totally harmless and actually fun to watch that you could show your child if you really wanted to.
Right. Or like kids you babysit, or like your cousins or something like that. And it's just, I think it's also another really good example of how when these like tween stars try to make the leap from tween star to adult star, and they just cannot do it right, or they can't do it without like incurring harm for the sake of being like edgy. That's what this movie gives me.
And it does, the whole thing has that feeling too of like uneasiness.
Yeah.
And like no comfort. Like there's just there's no heart at the end of the day to like hold on to, because you can tell that they're not comfortable.
Yep.
You can tell that the writing's not comfortable, and like they don't even probably really want to be there at all. So
they seem like really advanced androids in this movie.
Like they're running on autopilot.
Yeah.
Which I think, when I first watched this, I was like, honestly, I kind of want to back away slowly and not cover this, because it's such a train wreck, and like I don't necessarily want to like call attention to this movie.
Right.
In any way, but there is something to be gleaned from it, both from the perspective of just, for all the Mary-Kate and Ashley nerds out there, like it is a moment in their career for sure, for the worse.
Well, I think it's also just another really important, and it sounds so stupid when I'm like really important, but like this stuff was peddled and consumed by so many of us. Like we always talk about how it feels like we were all raised by the same people because we all watched all these movies so much, and it's like, if you're white and you watch this movie and you ingest it, like you don't even understand that you are like literally eating like a spoonful of like white supremacy like as you're watching it, but it's like the way that every non-white character is used as like looking stupid or like a resource. It's just like really gross. And also imagine like if you were like the only Chinese girl in your group of white friends, or like the only black girl in a group of white friends. Like it's like
this movie would be so trash and alienating.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And I think that I would like that to be one of the main takeaways of this podcast in general too. Like if you do rewatch the things that we talk about and you're white, like just think about what was internalized and ingested through these movies, because it can't really be overstated how much white supremacy is like fed to you
Yeah.
without ever, being outright racist yourself, like saying things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And it makes me sort of...
It's a mentality.
Yeah, and I actually think that it's kind of a good tool for, like, people that, like, white people, white girls especially, who haven't, like, come to terms with really thinking about their racial identity as a white person. It's, like, a lot of the stuff that's happened over the past year, like, at places where I work, like, just conversations with other white people, like, a lot of white people will not, like, admit that they have, like, ingested white supremacy over time because they feel like they have to be admitting that they are explicitly racist and that they are, like, inherently a bad person because of that. But it's like, there are structures that have fed this to us, including Dual Star Incorporated. And it's like, you have to own it to, like, get anywhere. So if that means, like, and the reason why it's a good tool is because, like, we've all seen this stuff. And also, this movie is really well timed for us to do in light of everything that happened in Atlanta a few weeks ago, and with this whole conversation that is, like, finally being noticed by white people about anti-Asian hate. Like, this is a good example of the shit we were fed. It's just food for thought. Give it a thought.
And yeah, and I think that conversation and reflecting on that is the worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah.
If you do rewatch it with that lens, if you will.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's lots of great Mary-Kate and Ashley content.
Yeah. I said to Audrey,
doesn't have problems like this.
I cannot wait to do Billboard Dad, Switching Goals. Cannot wait for both of those because they're so good.
Yeah.
We really went there, but it needed to be said.
We could not cover this movie without going there.
No.
It would be a disservice.
Yeah, no, it would be really horrible. So, anyway, let us know your thoughts on this movie, on anything we've covered. As always, XOXO.
Gossip Girl. And shop at Alien Brats.
Yes, please do. Please do. This is actually the first person who ever sent us anything because she liked us. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Can't believe it.
Make it worth her while, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. We're actually going to go now.
Okay. See you next week.
Okay, bye. See you next week.
Bye. You can find more from us at evergreenpodcast.com/sleepover-cinema and keep up with all our latest creative projects at twopinkpictures.com. If you want to watch our show as well as listen, we're on YouTube too, yay! Search Sleepover Cinema or go to the link tree in our Instagram bio. We're on Instagram and Twitter at twopinkpictures and would love to hear from you there. We're also on TikTok at Sleepover Cinema, and that's really where the party is at.
It's true. And if you like Sleepover Cinema, if it brings back evocative memories of your childhood or your adolescence or maybe even just babysitting in the early 2000s, please share an episode with a few friends. Sleepover Cinema is a production of Evergreen Podcasts, produced, edited, and engineered by us, Hannah and Audrey Leach. Sleepover Cinema is mixed by Sean Rule Hoffman, and theme music is by Josh Perlman Hall. Special thanks to executive producers Michael D'Aloia and David Moss.
We'll chat again soon.
We'll chat again soon.